jumping right into it today, I got a question for you, Mateo. What would you say was one of the biggest mistakes that you made on one of your early short film projects?
Honestly, not getting enough coverage. Like, I'll be there, I'm like, do I really need, like, let's just move with this shot, like, I'm editing it in my head, you know, this is what freaking Robert Rodriguez does, and then, like, I'll get to the end of it, and I'm like, oh, that take was ruined by this was ruined by this, there's, like, a little thing, you know, like a continuity error that's pretty major, or just, like, a little thing that's wrong with the framing. In one, I had, like, the LED, it was an LED lamp in the room that was providing most of my light, and it was doing this, like, shimmery thing, because it was syncing up with the shutter speed. And so, like, that, in, like, I had a few takes that were fine, and then a bunch of takes that were, like, just completely ruined. And the ones I really wanted, that I was like, we don't need another take, was one of the ones that was ruined, and
Dang.
I had to basically edit around this for this scene.
Yeah, that sucks. You always got to sync up your shutter speed to like make sure that doesn't happen. But buy quality filmmaking equipment, guys. That is one of the main reasons why you buy expensive lights, is so that you just don't have to worry about that happening. So when you talk about coverage, do you just mean like coverage of the same takes so that you have like more options to choose from? Because when I think of coverage, I'm usually thinking about like different angles and different giving myself more options in the edit, not just for different takes where there might be like subtle differences between them, but just like, you know, having different blocking, seeing it from a different angle, just to like give myself options in the edit. Like, which one is it?
Here specifically, I'm thinking it was the different angles, because at different angles, like, the framing was better, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, it all worked, but from this one specific angle, the way it caught the LED, it just, something in it, just completely.
And you were like married to it, because
I was married to it.
That was the only coverage you had of that. Yeah, that
and
sucks.
I was like, oh.
See, I feel like I used to overshoot things, but I'm taking more of a, is it Robert Eggers? Who did The Lighthouse?
Eggers, yeah.
Nice. Okay, so like his whole approach to that was editing in camera. So anytime like you see something on screen, there probably wasn't like an alternative to use for that. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's kind of ideal. But like even as recently as our last project, I feel like that bit me in the butt a couple times, because I'm like, that's the shot I'm going with, and then maybe, you know, I second guess it in the edit. But okay, so yeah, not getting enough coverage. I think for me, one of the biggest mistakes, and I'm going to go way back. So this was back, like, when I say film, I mean film with quotations. This was back when I was about 12 years old. We were filming with like a crappy camcorder, which wasn't cool back then. Maybe it is today. We know it is today. But we were using a camcorder before it was cool, and filming these like epic fantasy films in our backyard.
That's what it does.
The thing is, like, we could have made decent films, even if they're a bit amateur, had we just written stories that take place in the environment that we have access to. But there's just something really bad about like this. Clearly, we're trying to be a fantasy film, but we're filming in like a suburb, and there's like that discontinuity. So I think like early on, one of the earliest lessons I've learned from like the early days of making films is like writing around my constraints, writing around what I have access to, because maybe I could have done a comedy film about kids in their backyards, you know, like lean into the fact that we're kids. And kind of to like add to that, I feel like we would write roles that were older than we were, because we were acting in our films. And it's a little cringy when you have like a 12-year-old trying to act like in this serious role and act like they're like a businessman, for example.
I mean, I remember I think it was the first film that I'd written that you were on, Colleagues on a Trial Basis. And I'd written for this film, and I wrote, it was like, everybody really needed to be in their mid-30s. We were all college students, but it kind of works when you're a college student, you know, in high school, like, you know, late high school, early college. Like, okay, yeah, maybe these are just kind of very grown-up young people, but when you're, you know, kids, you really need to be writing for either extremely youthful roles or just something funny.
That's what I've learned in my experience. But I will say, like, one of our favorite movies is Brick.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you know, kind of like is younger people acting older in a sense.
Like they're still like in high school, you
True.
know.
Yeah.
Rian Johnson with Brick. It's basically like, what if Nate the Great went to high school? You know, so it's a bit different. I don't think I would class him in the same.
You don't think Colleagues
genre
is as good as Brick?
You know, surprisingly, no, I don't.
Yeah, something tells me that. Oh, what was the director's name? I forget. He did
Ryan
Looper.
Johnson of Brick?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ryan Johnson. Something tells me he had a few more films under his belt, maybe a few more micro shorts under his belt by the time he made Brick.
Gosh, his micro shorts are fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it honestly, I owe so much to our micro shorts, which kind of gets us into the main topic of today, micro shorts. What are your thoughts on them? Why should people do them? What's good about them? And like what lends themselves to rapid growth?
So I think we've been over this on this show, so I'm not going to just beat the dead horse too much, even as we are now in the remote seasons. So, but like quantity over quality will eventually just lend you quality. I think part of like doing a bunch of like little bad films really preps you to just put out something of quality. While if you're slaving away for 6 months on the same project, you're going to put out one feature of the specific quality while you could be putting out a bunch of little microfilms of varying quality. And that varying quality lets you iterate and iterate and iterate until you get something good. While if you're just really sitting in on something that's a big endeavor, you're going to get like a product of specific quality.
Yeah, for sure.
You're kind of stuck in the, well, I have to make everything kind of uniform for this one big project rather than really pushing yourself with the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, like you can't do micro shorts all your life. I mean, I guess you
do
could.
need to graduate at a point.
Yeah, you do need to graduate. You do need to push yourself into how can I like really do something more ambitious. But I feel like even within 2024, like we did a handful of micro shorts. We did like 2 or 3 micro
Something
shorts.
like that, yeah.
Some of them not produced. Some of them weren't good enough to actually put out.
Mm-hmm.
But like we put out a lot and it was like, okay, yeah, we're iterating, we're doing things. For example, Does God Love Robots was really the product of doing a bunch of micro shorts in 2023. We shot Does God Love Robots about a year ago. And,
almost exactly.
In early 2024. I think, was it January? It might have been February. I forget.
Yeah, it was like within the early months, yeah.
Yeah, but right in that window. So about a year ago. But the year before, we'd done like 3 or 4, maybe 5.
5 seems like a lot, but I know the year before we did like a big project, which was Bleeding Heart Routine, and then we had like a couple smaller ones to supplement it.
Bleeding Heart Routine was 2022.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, dang, dude. Okay.
Yeah. Because
you're right.
We finished it right before I started my job. Which it's been, 3 years now. So.
Well.
But, Bleeding Heart Routine, for example, that was basically the only thing we put out that year. Roughly. To my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It was, it was the big thing. We ramped up to it. We had all the logistics. We got all the actors. We did it. It was a great experience. I love Bleeding Heart Routine. And then 2023, we just put out 4 or 5 micro shorts, roughly about the same amount of footage, honestly, as Bleeding Heart Routine. And that really, really expanded our horizons, as it were, at least artistically. Mm-hmm. Compared to just doing Bleeding Heart Routine. Even though Bleeding Heart Routine as like a logistical endeavor was really good, and I learned a lot from it. And we definitely took stuff from Bleeding Heart Routine and put that into Hypnagogia.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's just like, here's how you get actors who aren't your personal friends from high school,
right. Yeah, I mean, really, filmmaking is all about those micro lessons, which is why like I'm such a big fan of micro shorts. Because you could have a film that's 99% of the way there in terms of quality, and then there's just like one small thing that takes the audience out of the experience. And so if you can learn those small lessons on smaller projects where it is rapid, every project's different, you're doing the entire like production cycle over and over and over again instead of like, oh, I did pre-production for a couple weeks on this big project that took me 2 years, and then you're only experienced pre-producing or producing a project like once versus like, you could do the same thing for like 10 micro shorts and have way more experience and have opportunities to work out the kinks. And so really, like when I look at our growth as filmmakers over the past like 6 or 7 years, we would do the every once in a while projects, once a year, every other year, something like that. Like we weren't doing it all the time. But during that frame of time that you were talking about, like in 2023, 2024, I've really seen us grow a lot as filmmakers. And it's given us the opportunity to like experiment as well. And like you mentioned, it doesn't always work out because some of our micro shorts are terrible. They didn't turn out. Some of them didn't get finished. Some of them were reluctantly finished by you. because I gave up on it or whatever. I
Many
remember
such cases.
Whiskey Futures. I was just like, I don't like this project. You can edit it.
I liked Whiskey Futures. The issue with Whiskey Futures was that for the project, like the overlays in the background were way too ambitious for what we actually could do.
They were actually pretty simple. It was just that there was a bug in After Effects when I was working on it. It just would not render. It would crash every time. Yeah, luckily, I think background like replacements are relatively easy now, but I just think like it wasn't so much that I just didn't like it and I just gave up. And I don't, not to get into
it.
But there were
I think the other thing was that we had that IR issue.
That's true.
With the filter,
which ruined
turned
my
everything
vision.
brown.
Yeah, it did. They just change it to black and white, and it doesn't matter. But
and I'm like, oh yeah, black and white. Might as well crop it 4:3, and we're set.
And then we never looked back. Almost every project, black and white, 4:3.
Are you doing Hypnagogia 4:3?
Yeah, I changed it. I changed it back.
For context, we'd been debating this for basically as long as the project has been going. Is it going to be black and white 4:3, or are we going to do color, or are we going to do like normal 16:9?
Yeah, this is just a great example of my commitment issues. But luckily, I framed all the shots in Hypnagogia, which is our feature film, by the way. You guys are going to get to see a teaser of it today, which is going to be really fun. But I framed all the shots to work in like 16:9 and 4:3, and so it honestly looks great in both. But there are a few shots that are in color. Just a few.
Hey, I mean, if it looks good.
It looks really good.
I believe it was in the French Dispatch where Wes Anderson just like basically the color grade of the shot, the actual like the way it's cropped, all of that. I think even sometimes frame rate just really depends on what he likes for the exact shot, and sometimes for the scene. So sometimes you go from 16:9 to like a proper just like square. Sometimes you'll go from like black and white to like super saturated. It's fantastic.
I love that. I've been doing that for a long time though. Not to say I'm better than Wes Anderson or anything, or I did it first.
Wes Anderson, passe.
But like, I did a short film. You could call it a micro short if you want. It's like 6 minutes, 5 minutes. But this would have been in 2018 called Masterpiece, and it switches from black and white to color. And there's a specific narrative reason for that. Same thing for Hypnagogia, like the shots that are in color. I don't know if I've run this by you, but
I don't think you have at this point.
You watch a rough cut of it, you're gonna go, I understand. That's actually. I think you're going to really like it. Yes, speaking of the teaser for Hypnagogia or trailer or sneak peek or whatever I said like 30 seconds ago, teaser. I would like to share with everyone for the first time the official teaser for Hypnagogia. It's not the official trailer. There's a lot more to come for this film. But without further ado, here's the official teaser for the film that we have talked about for like the past 4 podcast episodes. And we haven't shown anything.
Roll it.
There we go. Yeah, so hopefully it gives you an idea of the tone of the project and kind of, I don't know, gives you something to base our micro shorts that we're about to show you off of. Maybe you can see some similarities there, but
like perhaps the color grade and crop.
And aspect ratio, yeah.
I will
say both of the micro shorts we're going to be showing you today are 4:3, but only one of them is in black and white. Although to be fair, the other one's very muted, so it's kind of like pretty similar. But
it's like the Sicario digital, where it's like sparse on purpose, very raw.
Right. Also filmed on high 8, which is just a little extra something if you're into that sort of thing.
I do love the high 8.
Before we get into showing you guys the micro shorts and doing kind of a director's breakdown, commentary, lessons learned kind of segment, I'd like to ask you, Mateo, before we get into it, what inspired you this week? Just curious of what media or what things you've been up to that's inspired you.
I've been, and we talk about this in the show, go back, watch our other episodes, but, there's that kind of intake-output cycle.
Mm-hmm. How much did you say is like a good ratio there?
Oh, God. It changes every time for me. I think it's like 60-40 at some points.
60 in, 40 out?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I mean, honestly, it usually goes to about 70-40, with that extra 10% being, I don't know, put out 110%.
Mm.
But I've been in the output cycle right now. I've
That's
been
awesome.
really working on, and Zach, you've seen these tracks come out. I've shot them to you a bunch, but I've been really working on putting out music for Hypnagogia.
You've been doing a fantastic job, by the way.
Thank you. I've been really inspired, and I've been, as I've been learning waveform, which is basically like Pro Tools a bit to the left. I'm sure somebody will get mad at me for saying that, but it's true. I've been learning the process for waveform and getting a workflow together, and thank God that I went to school and got a media production minor, because that's the one time that I really felt like helped by my training, has been putting together all this audio stuff, even beyond my different podcasting experience. Just like remembering all my Pro Tools tutorials has been very beneficial. But I've as I learned the software, I feel like I've opened up some new doors for ways to do things that I didn't have before when I was working in, at some point, just Audacity. And so I've been just really inspired by Colin Stetson's music, actually. You'll see a little bit of that in some of the more chaotic songs on the soundtrack. But I've just been inspired to put out stuff. I've also been listening to a lot of Yes, the band.
Oh yeah, love them.
Yeah, it's, prog rock, can't go wrong. But funnily enough, not really the visual thing for me right now. It's
no movies?
It's all the music. I've been watching some movies, but none that are really pushing me to create the way that Yes and Colin Stetson are right now.
That's fair. Well, I totally relate to when you're learning a new tool and you see what it's capable of, like how that can inspire you, because you start to realize what's possible. That's been happening a lot with me, because there's a new Final Cut update towards the end of last year, and the magnetic mask tool is really great. So it basically makes it to where you can instantly rotoscope anything, and that whole that really got me thinking, oh man, I could do a lot with that. And so a recent music video that I just finished making literally yesterday for my singer-songwriter friend Grayson is just magnetic mask all over that video. I took that concept of oh, I could do something cool with this, and I did something cool with it for almost every shot. So yeah, I'll have to show that to you on another time.
Scott, I love a synth. I love a little something to play with. That's why I have a theremin over there that I've actually used a bunch on this project. So whenever I fully unlock not fully, but whenever I start to grasp the potential of something, it's always fun to fiddle with it and do new things.
Right.
Zach.
Yeah.
I know you've just said the Final Cut Pro update. But have there been any movies or any art in particular that's inspired you this week?
Yeah, not so much movies. I've been meaning to watch more movies. A lot of my downtime, I've just been playing Gran Turismo 7. Really fun game.
Respectable.
Yeah, a really fun game. But I watched a YouTube video yesterday by what's his name, Jake Frood? I forget, but he used to be a van life guy. He doesn't do that full time anymore, but he's a filmmaker, former van life guy. He talks about his creative process, and he did a video about just how to push boundaries creatively and push yourself creatively, and just it really challenged me to problem solve more with my filmmaking process and to be more ambitious with the visuals, because he was showing these examples of shots that he had made in his garage in 30 minutes, and I was like, how is he doing this? This looks crazy. These visuals are wild. And then you see the breakdown of it, and you're like I need to start being more creative, because a lot of these tools are at our disposal. For example, he did a shot where he was levitating off of his bed. So he's laying in bed, and then he starts levitating, kind of that Breaking Bad shot.
Yeah.
But the way he did it was he just had a standing desk and a 2x4. So he put the 2x4 on the desk and laid on the 2x4 and set up the camera on the desk and was shooting down, and then just used the motor to levitate. It's just a really simple technique, and it's really effective. So I mean, what's inspired me recently is that video, seeing what's possible, and just trying to challenge myself to think out of the box a little bit more.
Well, do you want to jump into it now?
Yeah, so let's get into our first micro short. First micro short of today is called Implementation.
Oh.
One of my favorites. So we shot this in 2023 summer. We did the whole project basically in a day. We weren't asked to. No one made us do it in a day. It was one of those spontaneous projects. And it's one of the, I don't want to say one of the few, I would say every other micro short that we do actually turns out decently, and this was one of them. Look who it is.
Wearing the Omicron hat, I just realized.
Well, if I could try, if I could release all the pain,
It's a Lynchian shot right there.
Very Lynchian.
This jumpsuit into the boots. Reminds me of My Bloody Valentine.
Classic. I love that. I have so much to say about that, but before I nerd out, Mateo, what stands out to you as a lesson just right off the bat?
Honestly, it's kind of a mixed lesson where it's like, hey, remember production value. You need production value. Like, this is one of the weaker micro shorts we put out.
You think so?
I mean, I really rank there's like the three big ones in my mind. Number one being Does God Love Robots, which we always love. And then there is The House That Eats. And then there's this one. But we have others, but like of the kind of the main three.
Right.
And this is always at the bottom. I feel like we did good work with it. But I'm always struck by like how overall the production value is not there just because we literally like did this in a day.
Yeah.
I think I wrote it the night before, as we often do. So it was one of those, oh yeah, like this basically took 24 hours to do. And at the same time, I am struck by like, just go out and do something, right? Like we could have really like agonized over this, but we didn't. We threw Emily in a surplus M1 like World War II Korea era helmet. The mask she's wearing is the full face respirator I use for when I'm painting car parts. I think there's a jacket and a jumpsuit she's wearing. Both of those are mine, just from random things. The wrench is mine from working on things in my garage. The guns are mainly like odd props that I had lying around. And we put together like a completely cohesive piece of cinema just like that.
We did.
You know, it's not going to beat Wes Anderson out.
But
Sorry.
hey, we're talking about it like 2 years later.
Yeah, we're talking about it 2 years later. We could have just not made it and not talked about it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
and
we
I
could
would
have
rather
just
make it than not.
Right. I mean, so we did this probably on a Saturday or on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, we could have easily had the excuse of, hey, we're just gonna like chill because we had a long week or whatever. We're just gonna like watch movies or play video games and just like hang out. But we said, no, we're gonna like, let's go make a micro short. We're just gonna do it. We're gonna do it from start to finish. It's gonna be great. and it was significant enough for us to like be talking about it all this time later. So
we talk about quick and dirty a lot, and this is the perfect example. Even though Does God Love Robots probably quicker and dirtier, I think I wrote the script like the day of. I think we did Does God Love Robots and I wrote it the day of, and then we had to postpone that shoot day, if you recall.
Oh, I forgot about that. It was like a week later.
Yeah, like we put even less thought into Does God Love Robots, frankly, other than the script, maybe.
Yeah, and it turned out better. Ish.
Yeah, and it turned out better. But like this is something I feel like we really put into the film is let's make a piece of art with what we have.
Right.
Actually, some of the same guns you saw like lying on the bed right there, those are the same guns we later used in Hypnagogia. So
yeah, very cool.
I think that lesson pulled over pretty well.
Yeah. And to add to that, like there's the quick and dirty element of like no excuses. We're just going to go out and make something, work with our limitations, constraints, or whatever. But also from a gear perspective, like if you're just starting out, I had access to better cameras, but for this project, I chose to use a Sony ZV-1, which is like a $300 vlogging camera from Sony. Just shoots 8-bit. It's like got a little built-in zoom lens. It's actually fantastic for a lot of things, but I used that in like
Zack's gear corner.
Yeah, no, not to get too nerdy with gear, but like I used that in like a really small gimbal. The only lighting for this project was the gimbal I was using had a built-in LED light on the front, and so there's like a front light on some of these shots. But other than that, just working with available light and knowing like, walking into a room and knowing like, okay, the light's coming from this angle, I need to be shooting on this side to do like a far side key kind of situation. And I mean, almost no lights for this project. I don't think so either. There's like a 10-second long shot of the door being open.
Yeah.
Maybe it couldn't have been from that. Honestly, one of the things I love about this project is like everyone that's in the film also worked on the film.
Yeah.
So there's 3 characters, and it was like me who like was also shooting and directing it, and then it was you who wrote it, and then it was Emily who I think that's all she was just in the film.
She helped on set as well.
Oh yeah, right. So she helped on set too.
She did a decent amount of work, moving props and
right,
taking care of things
and helping with like balancing the gimbal and stuff. So it's just really cool that everyone that was on crew was also the cast, and I just think that's really fun and also economical.
Yeah. A lesson we brought over to Hypnagogia as I am the star of that one. So.
Yeah, that is true. I'm not in that one, but oftentimes we'll like throw me in there just to like be an extra guy. One thing we did with this project that I think was creative, and I haven't seen a lot of other people do that, but is to have subtitles represent like an internal dialogue kind of thing. I haven't seen that done a whole lot, and I thought we do it a lot, but
I think I pulled it from some French New Wave film I saw a while ago. I couldn't name it.
I think, if I'm correct, like this film was meant to have voiceover, and for whatever reason, the voiceover was just like not working for us, and so we chose to do the subtitles later. And I felt like, because when you get into voice acting work, it can kind of, if it's not all the way there, it can kind of take away from what you're seeing. And so using the text on screen was like a really non-distracting way to tell the story, while also like, I don't know, voiceover can kind of get in the way sometimes if you're using it to like overly tell your story.
I keep trying to do voiceover.
Yeah, and then we keep doing subtitles instead.
I keep trying to do voiceover because I keep trying to like, this time I'll do it right, and then I don't know, we always scrap it for whatever reason, and usually for the better, honestly.
Yeah, and we're probably going to do it for Hypnagogia. It was kind of the same story with Does God Love Robots, which we're about to screen here. I don't know. It's like our thing, it works really well. I think it's really effective. I wouldn't want to do it for all the dialogue in a film, but I think leaving it like only using it for internal dialogue, I think is really fun.
Zack's criticized me for this before, but he's like, you always put frickin' like walls of text on screen. And I'm like, well, you see, I was an English major. This is just kind of what I like to do.
So your thing, like for a while, was you liked big title cards, and then we would always try to do
title cards.
See, I don't
Gaspar Noé's love, like with the big freaking like right in your face red block letters, like that is my jam.
It is very
as they
cool,
say.
but like I always trip up on it in the post production because I don't know, I like to tell the story with the visuals, and by visuals I mean like the video, like the thing that we went out and captured. Like I like to lean on that more, but this is a compromise for us, because I
Yeah.
don't love the big title cards and text on screen typically, but I really like this. So in a way, we're both kind of getting what we want, where it's like storytelling, visuals are like telling a story, pushing things along, but also we get that like stylistic element that also adds to the story in other ways. I don't know, would you agree with that?
Honestly, and maybe this has just been you lambasting me every time I throw big blocks of text on screen and you're like, please, this is a movie, not a book. But I've tried to stay away from the titles too much. Often if I do like a little artsy short that I just throw on my personal YouTube channel that nobody sees because they shouldn't, if I do that, often I will have like, the titles down there. It's almost like a visual poem in many cases. So I've tried to stray away from it, but watching this back, I'm like, this kind of works. And as we'll see in Does God Love Robots, it really works sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we show that, like, I want to ask you specifically, like, what did you learn while acting this project or while writing this project, just while working on it, that you've directly taken lessons from and applied them to our feature film project?
So while writing this project, I was sort of just like, what's the concept of like, what if the Grim Reaper were stalking you, and then you go in and like just go into the like kind of explore the subject matter more, and it's like, oh, he's not stalking you, you're an arms dealer, he wants what you have, you're like a means to an end for him. And I don't know how well that came across there, but doing most of it through body language was interesting for me when I was, because I wrote the character and then I played the character. That's never happened before, and that'll never happen again, right?
Definitely.
But while I was like putting all this together, I was like, oh wow, this is like now that I'm in edit, now that, well, not in edit, and now that I'm in production, and then it came to the edit, like I have to play this a little differently than written on paper.
I see.
And I think we've done a pretty good job at like me not being, we've talked about this before, we not being like too married to my script when it passes into your hands, the director. And I feel like I've been less neurotic than I could be about that. But this was definitely one of those like, oh yeah, like I'm seeing very much, not just the director thinks it should be this way, but very much like, here are the physical hurdles to making it exactly as it was in your head in the script part of the production. And now that we're actually into production rather than pre-production, you must come to grips with reality and what kind of time scale and budget you're working on, which is no time and no budget.
Right. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning too, to add to that, like, filmmaking is collaborative, and I know everyone knows that and says that, but like if I were to make a film by myself, like shot, directed, written, the big important part is written, it would look very differently than if you did all of those things on your own. But the fact that we're working together, there's this, I really like it. The product that we come up with is always different than either of us would have come up with on our own. And so like I see our fingerprints, I see both of our fingerprints on the projects that we collaborate on. And I think that like kind of learning to let go of your baby in a way is like a really important lesson to learn for filmmaking. And especially like talking from the perspective of just finishing our first feature film, like there was a lot of that letting go of your baby, and like,
oh yeah,
I had certain ideas.
You didn't always call it letting go of your baby.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, yeah, I definitely, I see that, especially in this. I contrast this to like when I was in college. You were a little further away. You were going to college like an hour away, like a far enough distance that we weren't making as many films together. Most of our films happened in the summer rather than in winter and fall. And when I was making my media production class projects, I was noticing sometimes I was like I can do this, and like Zack doesn't have like my exact vision. So like when I make this, I can make it like very precisely to like how I was making it. And then on other points, I'm like, man, I wish I could make this the way that Zack makes it look. I really wish I could play the scene the way he does it, because he has like you have like a completely different like framework in your mind for how to set things up visually than I do.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because you produced a film called Landlocked Whaler, which
Oh
I
yeah,
always have trouble saying this.
it's
Landlocked
it's still
Whaler,
one of my favorites.
but it's funny.
I
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it's very much like my auteur, and I put that in quotes, but
Mhm.
it's my auteur project because I did, I like ran sound and camera and directed all at once, did all of that.
Mhm.
So like it's like the most like only Mateo's vision as you can get
Mhm.
for a film, and there's films like that for you too, Zach. But
Mhm.
like comparing the two is very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I bring that up because, for you to say like, oh, I had full creative control, but I kind of wish it looked a little bit like Zack worked on it. That's how I felt watching that film because you had produced that after we worked on Colleagues on a trial basis. And I had like pushed back on some stuff like with the titles and things like that, like we were just talking about. And then I watched Landlocked Whaler and I go, this is what Mateo wanted Colleagues to look like. And in a lot of ways, I wish we had done that with Colleagues because I think it would have been better, specifically with the titles and just kind of leading into the Wes Anderson pastiche, right?
Which,
So
now it's passe. At the time, people my film
people
classes were
ate
like,
that up.
ooh, yeah. I still think fondly of it. I do like the fact that it's sort of a symphony of talent. That's a very clippable bit right there. But this symphony of talent where like I'm one section, you're another section, and we come together and make something that's greater than the sum of its parts.
That's really how I see it, for sure.
And sometimes does that mean that I don't get all the words on screen that I want? Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes does that mean that we'll be shooting a scene and I'm like, hold on, it should be this way. I wrote it. I know the way the scene's supposed to play.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in Hypnagogia, there was some scenes in the living room that we shot in your apartment, and you had like a very like different idea of what the conflict in the scene was
Mm-hmm.
than what it was for a conversation. And like together we're able to like modify each other's visions in a way I think is edifying.
Yeah, not to get too off on a tangent, but I remember us doing that with Bleeding Heart Routine too. Because I remember it was our first shoot day. We were in the theater doing the theater scene, and there was a way that we took that scene that wasn't in the script, and we were both really excited about it. Like I would suggest something, and like you might have been a little hesitant because it wasn't the way the script was, but like eventually we made it a certain way, and we deviated, and we were both like really excited about it because the way it played was really fun.
For the like overall narrative, I think between the two of us, something that working together, especially in all these micro shorts, has taught me is that there are certain things that I should be married to, and there are certain things that I'm married to until like a better option is presented.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up implementation, because I need to apply my own lessons to Hypnagogia specifically. So something I need to mention before we watch the next film is something I learned with it was it's really important when you're sequencing shots. So like this shot goes before this shot goes before this shot, that you do so in a cycle of what I call setups and payoffs. And so this is kind of like working within my own
setups and payoffs.
Yeah, this is like kind of my own filmmaking framework. It's kind of how I like to view sequencing shots. And ultimately I define filmmaking as your ability, mostly film directing, as your ability to sequence shots. And so what I learned with this project, and I didn't even realize it while I was doing it, it was more after the fact, but I'll go ahead and share my screen really quick to kind of convey what I'm about to describe a little bit better. Every shot needs to serve as a question for the next shot, which needs to serve as an answer, but also have it lend itself to another question that's answered by the next shot. And so without getting too in depth, because I've talked about this in the past, having that conflict of you set something up, you reveal something, but you don't reveal too much of something. And it begs kind of like this natural question of like, what could be next? And then it engages the audience because they want to see what that next shot is. I'll give you a quick example of it. I'll give you two examples of it. So in this first shot, Mateo is walking down the stairs, and at the end of the shot, he stops. So that is a natural question of, well, why is he stopping? We go ahead and we play the shot. We get the answer to that question, which is it's something around this corner. As the shot progresses, it's the door's open. Well, what that poses a new question. It's like, well, why is the door open? Like presumably it's not supposed to be open. And then, that's kind of the end of that micro scene. To give like another example, honestly, that was probably the best one. Let's see. Just kind of early on in the film, we introduce your character. The question is literally answered. The question is in the form of like the text on the screen. He's been following me for days. The question is who? We see something in the shadows. Something moves, but we don't know what it is. The question is like, well, what is it? We progress into this shot, which ends with you reaching for your firearm. So the question in that shot, or the answer in this shot is, well, whatever he was seeing is dangerous enough for him to like need a firearm. And so I could go on and on. The way that you stage blocking and reaction shots can kind of lend itself to that. So, you know, again, to reiterate, like you're walking down the steps and you stop. Like that's just like there's so much visual intensity with that, because it's like why did he stop? And you might care a lot as an audience. It might be something you slightly care about, might be a big question or a small question, but regardless, you need to think of your films as having these cycles of setups and payoffs. And so that was a big lesson I learned. I don't think I was thinking about it and internalizing it while working on implementation, at least on the front end. This is something that I learned from the project kind of in retrospect. And so I took a lot of that into Hypnagogia. And our next film, which is Does God Love Robots? What do you say we get into Does God Love Robots? You think it's time?
This is, I will preface this.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll preface this with, I think this is my favorite of our micro shorts.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And for the longest time, Choose a Wagon, which was like the favorite of our micro shorts, one that we actually put into competition next to Bleeding Heart Routine, which is a film we made like 3-4 years later. It was as, if not more successful, which I find hysterical.
Yeah, the fact that, in your opinion, it's better is like a big compliment, because like I remember being in the theater watching Choose a Wagon and like hearing people's reactions, and that just kind of confirmed a lot of your feelings on it. And just personally, I thought I couldn't beat Choose a Wagon. Not just like for myself, because I have my own like ranking of our films, but like ranking as far as like your ranking. Like, can I beat something that Mateo's going to like more than Choose a Wagon? That was like a big thing for me. So I'm glad that this film was able to do it. And I would say of all the films I've made, this one reflects my filmmaking style more than any of them. Even like Hypnagogia is kind of like close, but this one is like defines my taste as a filmmaker. So the fact that you like the thing that I like most is really cool. I don't know. I think I cut you off.
It is, in my opinion, and obviously we're always getting better, but in my opinion, it is, for a film we made, you know, cumulatively worked on for less than 24 hours, it's the most us as a film. And it really shows our growth from, we're not resting on our laurels with Choose a Wagon.
Right.
So roll it whenever you're ready. Or stagnating. My neighbor to death with this shot.
I hope you did.
From the distant Sapphire Galaxy, a ferocious race of creatures have set out to conquer our universe, beginning with the planet Earth. A nuclear war is imminent, the results of which will poison even the distant reaches of outer space and planets such as this one, the Emerald Planet. Though they are fierce fighters when it comes to defending and protecting their way of life.
The snow. The snow was a complete accident.
It was a happy accident. Oh, I love that so much. Like, if I could just point out, I think the cross-cutting is really good. The fact that he like starts this prayer on the rooftop and then he's doing the same prayer like in a different location, and it just kind of like it implies that this is an ongoing thing, and that's I feel like it's that idea is that concept solidified by the fact that like he's doing like kind of mundane things at the start of the film too. Like there's this cyclical nature in the film that I think is really good. Um,
I will note, and this is a bit of an Easter egg, I guess, but the "I have no soul, but I must pray" is
yeah, I know
a
exactly.
bit of a reference to "I have no mouth and I must scream" by Harlan Ellison.
Classic science fiction short story, right?
Yes.
I don't think I've read it.
It's iconic. You should. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so I guess as far as lessons learned go, the whole like cycles of setups and payoffs thing, without like reiterating it too much, but that applied to this project a lot too. So for example, like with this shot,
correct, yeah,
it's like you're kind of looking at it, and it's sort of like a visual question of like I don't even know what I'm looking at, but then within the same shot, that question's answered. But then we cut away right before your head would have been in the frame. So it kind of like we haven't revealed who this character is yet. And so there's this overarching question of like, who is this character?
It's still there.
Right. And we never fully reveal it until like kind of later on in the film. But also like keeping his face abstracted, like you don't even see his face in this shot. A lesson that I learned from a filmmaker named Darius Burritt, who did he did a short film called Seafood Tester, and he ended up making that into a feature film. And I forget what the feature film was called. But anyways, like one of the lessons that, he was kind of like an OG filmmaking YouTuber too. He's been around for a while. But a lesson I learned from him is like not showing people's faces right away. And that's like sort of a way to build tension because you don't know who it is. Like faces are kind of comforting for people. It gives us something to latch onto. And so when you see a person without a face, it's just sort of, it adds intrigue. And so, not revealing someone's face in the first shot that they appear is sometimes a good idea. It just depends on the character. But I wanted to build a lot of intrigue around this character, which is why we hid it in shadows and stuff.
Well, for like how seat of the pants this was, if you couldn't tell, the robot's head was literally just a cardboard box I cut eye holes in and then put some yarn around. Like, it's extremely low budget, and yeah, it's still one of our best short films.
It's just effective,
beating out the one where we had like access to classic cars, and we were all on Route 66, and like we had like multiple actors, everybody was doing things, and like it's literally just me, in the house I'd moved into about a year ago, and Zack with the $5 Hi8 camera.
Love that thing.
We still really made an amazing piece of work, in my opinion.
I think so too. And
we really need to put this into contests and festivals.
How we ought to. I haven't been thinking about it, since we made that at the start of the year, right? And then we were all year thinking about the feature, and so that was always the taking up mental space in my brain. But yeah, maybe this will be our bleeding heart routine to what like it was to Choose a Wagon. This is what Choose a Wagon will be to Hypnagogia, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, this is definitely, I talk about a lot of stuff like, for example, Hypnagogia is a learning film. It's not the best movie we can put out, but it's a stepping stone to getting better, and like if you don't make one, you won't learn how to make one.
Right.
And inversely, I feel like Does God Love Robots, even though it's still a learning film, like we're still learning, you're iterating on the setup and payoff. It definitely was the culmination of a lot of practice, comparatively. And I think that's part of what makes it so good, is that you can tell we've really honed our filmmaking skills.
Yeah, for sure. With this project specifically, I know I had watched Skinamarink like shortly before, and so the concept of hiding things in the frame and not revealing them too much was a big thing I took into this project. But what made that, and I think I mentioned that in the last episode too, but to make kind of a more direct comparison to Hypnagogia, Hypnagogia has a classic monster in the film, and I don't know if I knew we were working on Hypnagogia at the time. I probably
I don't
didn't.
think we knew. I had about a month to do it, so I think it would have been at
Yeah.
least late spring by the time that we actually figured out
Yeah,
that we
you're
were going
right.
to be doing
You're right.
Hypnagogia.
But there being a monster in Hypnagogia, I really wanted to make sure that I did a similar thing that I did for this for Hypnagogia and not reveal the monster too much, because I just realized, given how effective Skinamarink was for me and then how well this film turned out, that lesson of abstracting things within the frame, which we did in a couple ways. We did with the grain of the Hi8 camcorder, just lent itself to a natural abstraction just because of the format. And then,
Yeah, even when the robot's praying and his kind of face is down, you can still like not quite see it.
Right. Yeah, I just think it turned out really good. Between the haze and the fog machine, that was kind of our first go at the fog machine. Like, we hadn't used it no, we did use it a lot prior to this. Never mind. The House That Eats, which maybe you'll see on another episode. But yeah, I just think that
The House That Eats is one of my very favorites. Not as much as this one, but I still think so fondly of it.
I feel like there's not enough there for me. Like, it's brief. It's a little too brief for me to like be in love with it. I feel like this 3-minute range is minimum for me.
Micro shorts and it's still got to be 3 minutes. Come on, give me
It
a
doesn't
30
have to
second
be. It
micro
doesn't
short.
have to be. But for me, I just like that length a lot. But speaking of like, what we carried into Hypnagogia, this was the first project that we filmed in your house. And so learning how to like light things in your house was really good practice, because there's a lot of shots in Hypnagogia where I set up a light through a doorway and shot it through like, there's a beam of light hitting the subject.
Hypnagogia's, frankly, is just in my house or on the outside of it.
And if I hadn't had the practice I did with this project, I don't know if it would have turned out as well. I don't know. But I get, like, the grand thesis of this podcast episode is just there's all these little lessons that we learned that I don't think Hypnagogia would have been nearly as good if we had just jumped into it. Yeah. Well, do you have any other thoughts on this film before we close out on it?
It's one of those. This really taught me. It gave me the confidence that we could put out something like that. We hadn't lost our edge, as it were. Before that, we had put out a couple that just didn't get made. Gonzo journalism one that we put out. I still want to eventually release that one. I think
do too. We need to.
I think it holds up.
I think it's actually
a little
good.
weirder, but I think it holds up. But Does God Love Robots really was like, okay, yeah, you can still put out some good product. You're not resting on your laurels. You haven't stagnated. You're still good. And I think it did continue to kind of instill me with confidence that we could keep iterating and keep doing things and put out a feature, which we did.
Yeah.
Like we finished shooting a feature last year, which is insane.
Go us.
Yeah. High five.
Yeah, I mean, the lessons are one thing, but the confidence that we got from that micro short, and really both of the ones that we showed today, was one of the most valuable things, I think. So, well, without further ado, our
do you want to drop the theme song?
Da 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 da. I don't have it yet.
Gear Corner. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Nice. I love that. Anyways, moving on. So today's Zack's Gear Corner, okay? I don't want to be too super specific like I was in last week's episode where we talked about the iPhone, but the thesis of Zack's Gear Corner today, and the way I want to bring gear into this like indie filmmaking discussion is, and especially to relate it to our recent feature film project, is how important it is to upgrade certain types of gear, certain pieces of gear. And I think you'll be surprised that I really don't recommend that you upgrade your camera right away. There's other pieces of filmmaking equipment that if you buy them early on, they'll last for a long time and they're extremely valuable. And so I think when you're making the leap from short film project to feature film project, upgrading your like tripod and having a really valuable or a good quality tripod, a good quality key light, those things are going to really last you, and you're going to really want them. If you've already, you're like us, done a bunch of micro shorts and you're ready to make that jump into feature films, I think you really need to have gear that's reliable, that isn't going to get in the way, because there's so many problems and issues that you're going to have to solve on set when it comes to a feature film. And just because of the volume of the project, you really need to have gear that stays out of your way, and that's going to do the job. And so upgrading from that Amazon Basics tripod that's going to blow over in the wind to something more heavy duty that you can leave your camera on, that you can set up quickly. All of that stuff really adds up and is super important. Video quality, less important. As you saw,
we shot Does God Love Robots on a high 8, and it's one of the best looking films we've made.
Yeah, because I mean, again, lighting and good tripods, and we had both of those for that project, but not a nice cinema camera, right? So keeping that in your mind as you're thinking about investing in gear, lighting is super important. I know I've talked about it before on the podcast, but lighting and having a good tripod is just going to carry you and really help you do the job of being a filmmaker on like a really big involved project. Now, on these like smaller projects where you're just getting started, like implementation, for example, we shot that with like a small gimbal and a vlogging camera because I thought it'd be fun. And, you know, it was a little bit finicky, but I think it worked out fine. I could afford the finickiness because it was such a small, low stakes project. But had I had that set up with Hypnagogia, it just wouldn't have been as seamless.
It just would not have been fun.
Yeah, it would have gotten in the way too much. So
we could have done it, but I think it would have taken us longer, and you would have been more frustrated.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard enough to make a film. It's even harder when you're also trying to figure out and troubleshoot the gear. So that's kind of my message to you today. It's a little bit of a broad one. If you want specific recommendations for video equipment, I'll leave a couple in the description.
Sold a billion of them.
That I will not recommend a camera today, but like in the description, I'll leave a link to a good tripod and a light if you're in the market for just like a relatively affordable but like good quality one that's going to last you for a long time. So I'll be sure to do that. But that concludes Zack's Gear Corner. Da da da. Honestly, you should write the theme song. Why are you putting this on me?
I'll put it together. I'll put
Music man over
together.
here. You're just you're in that world these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even like necessarily somebody very well musically trained. It's mostly vocal stuff, which I haven't. Oh man, I've been out of college for a while. I haven't done anything vocal since senior year of college.
Wow. You don't have to do vocals, just something like fun and peppy.
But like, you know, that's where my musical training really lies, other than like 3 years of piano, which I did not do well at. So it's I
mean, honestly,
so
any piano will help a lot.
Yeah.
That's like fundamental when it comes to like music. If you understand like chord progressions and stuff from like piano, I feel like you can just
that I really didn't I was like really like learning like what a quarter note was. And then I fell off or whatever. I think what it was is that my mom was tired of taking me. I fell off.
Oh my gosh,
I stagnated.
Dude. That's rough.
But here I am, and I'm it's pretty decent. So I'm excited for you all to hear it in Hypnagogia coming soon.
Yeah, music's really good. I hope you guys like the music. I hope you guys like the film. Like, you should let us know in the comments whether we should do like a live screening of it.
Ooh, that would
be kind of fun because we can live stream now pretty easily.
Yeah, we've got
something to think about.
Many, maybe too many options for live streaming.
Yeah, we've got a lot of exciting stuff. I know we've talked about the feature film a lot. I hope you've enjoyed our discussions about the feature film because we're probably going to have a few more, especially leading up to the release between announcing the DVD that we're going to release with all the bonus content. Just a little sneak peek that the films that you watch today will be bonus features on the DVD, in addition to some other films that you probably haven't seen. Maybe even Gonzo. That'll give them an incentive because it hasn't been released yet.
Never before released.
So, bonus micro short. We're going to do a director's commentary that'll also be on the DVD, in addition to obviously like the main film. It's going to be super cool. Maybe have some extras in there, but yeah, I'm excited for this year, like having an official film release. I don't know if we'll submit it to festivals. We probably will.
We have to.
We'll see. I have the money now. Just got a job.
That's nice. Oh,
I got a full-time
congratulations.
job. Yeah. I've been freelancing for like the better part of a year. So I've been freelancing and doing contract work kind of on and off for like basically since I started working at like 16. So I've been doing a lot of that. My wife and I have done weddings and we do like some projects here and there. But
so you have to get serious.
Yeah, I got to get serious. Yeah. So anyways, I'm actually working for my dad in his marketing department. So was able to land a job there, remote, doing video editing and stuff. So it's going to be really fun. It's going to be great. That being said, we can afford the festival submissions for the feature film and stuff. It's going to be really fun. But
it's not. I'm not the only one humping that, which is good because got to rebuild the engine in my Nova now. So
and get a new foundation.
well, I mean, the foundation I had like budgeted for, but I was like looking at it and I was like,
Gotta get that thing running, dude.
Like,
Make some movies out of it.
It was running, and then it's decided to continue to run, but with only 4 of 8 cylinders. So I was like, okay, well,
it's a V8, right?
Yeah, it's a V8, so it's 50% of the cylinders is really not a good feel.
Yeah.
So I'm tearing that sucker apart. You'll actually see it in a running state in the film.
In a running,
Hypnagogia.
Well, not that
it doesn't run in the film,
matters,
but it was running at that time.
Just in case you were wondering, yeah. It's funny, yeah. The film, the car is in the film.
Yeah.
Well, 1970s Chevy Nova.
It's not its first appearance in film, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in Landlocked Whaler. It was not running in Landlocked Whaler though. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also there's a scene in that movie similar to Hypnagogia where it's being worked on. I know you say it's in a running state, but I can show you a B-roll clip of it clearly not working very well, smoking out on a road.
Yeah, as often. You had to tow it home for me one time.
Honestly, I was so happy to do that. Like, I was thrilled that my wife and I's 2009 Honda CR-V, powder blue, it doesn't even have a hitch, I don't think. We had to have one installed. I don't think it's all-wheel drive. It was able to pull that huge car.
Like, the car is big, but it's not actually that heavy because they were all tin cans at that point.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of hollow, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's not a lot of beef to it. It only weighs as much as like a small compact nowadays weighs.
Oh, okay.
When you take all the airbags out, that tends to happen.
Mm-hmm. All the crumple zones. Take those out.
No crumple zones. Good luck. The crumple zone is the fact that you have a trunk that like is a mile long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that thing's massive, dude. It's so big.
Yeah, it's in Hypnagogia, so stay tuned for that if you want to see the Nova reveal.
We should do a podcast episode in the Nova, like out and about, you know?
Yeah, just
on a country road.
When I pull the engine out, this is actually the more expensive part of fixing the car is that I'm going to put a new transmission in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be that like hysterical column shift manual.
The column shift is that's fine, but it's just
no, it's not. That's part of the reason it was so scary for you to ride in it whenever you rode in it with me. Yeah, but
it's because it also wasn't working. Like it wouldn't go into second gear. Maybe a working version of that wouldn't be as scary.
That's not the engine's fault that it's not going to second gear. It's the fact that it's a 3-speed manual from 1971. Regardless.
Gosh, you have your like gear 1, which is like crawling, gear 2, which is for everything, and gear 3 for like highway only.
Yeah. We use gear 1 and 3 exclusively. Gear 2 is on vacation continually.
That's the most important one.
I know when I can get into gear 2, which is when gear 1 won't go, and I can just like shift it up. It's a functional automobile.
It definitely looks cool. So it's got that going for it.
It's like properly fixed and can do more burnouts than just shooting oil smoke through the tailpipe.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely need to shoot like a proper film that uses it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying for a while.
I know. You've been telling me to sell it and get a Miata.
Oh, I still think that's what you should do, but I'm just saying since that's not going to happen, I'd love to film it.
That may be my that might be a forever car for me is the Nova. We'll see. Well, thank you for listening.
I was going to continue talking about cars, but it's cool. I actually have one last thing for our audience before we sign off today. So, obviously we gave you a glimpse into some of our microfilms, and I hope you enjoyed the kind of processes of us like breaking it down and kind of watching it back. I would like to announce we would like to review your films, not just ours. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description for an application that you can fill out where you can send us a link to the project. We can either review it on the podcast, like with you present or without you, whatever's better for you. If you want to like ask more for critiques, if you're like a newer filmmaker and you want some like advice,
roast your film, just burn it down.
Yeah, like if you're, it's for two people, the way I see it. So if you're like kind of new with filmmaking, you'd like some constructive criticism, we'd love to like review that on the show. Or if you have like something that you'd like to share with the audience and the community here at Your Next Film, and you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, or pre-record a message where you like talk about lessons that you learned from making that film, and then we can show it to everyone. I think that'd be a really fun thing to do. And so, yeah, if you're interested, click the link in the description, and we will hopefully hopefully show your movie on the podcast. I think that'd be a really fun time. So, well, without further ado, Mateo, it's been a pleasure as always.
Always good to talk about movies.
Hopefully,
Talk about creativity. Talk
and
about you
stagnation.
selling all your cameras.
we didn't talk about that today. Oh gosh, I was looking at cameras on eBay yesterday.
Look at this guy.
I was like, how much is a Arri Alexa Classic?
Well, okay, I can't blame you. I can't blame you for an Alexa.
It's like $3,000, which
That's
is
not
not
bad.
bad. But
So
I
that's
mean,
about as much as my transmission's gonna cost.
priorities, dude. Priorities. No,
Honestly,
I know.
the
It's the
transmission
car.
wins out here.
It's the
What am
car.
I doing with an Alexa right now?
Especially like from you. You don't care about the camera.
I've got my height. I'm set.
Yeah. Well, without
All right, this has been Your Next Film.
thank you guys so much for watching. I've been your host, Zachary Koch,
I've been your host, Mateo Guthrie.
and we think you should go make a movie.
Right now, get out there.
Get out there. I don't care if it's like 4:37 on a Wednesday. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.